Hello, everybody. You're reading with Jimmy. Today, we're going to be reading Guy de Maupassant's The Matter with André, translated by Roger Collette. The notary's house faced to the square. Behind it, there was a pleasant, well-kept garden stretching as far as the passage de Pique, an alley which was always deserted and from which it was separated by a wall. It was at the bottom of this garden that Maitre Moreau's wife had given a rendezvous for the first time to Captain Sommervert, who had been paying attention to her for a long time. Her husband had gone to Paris for a week, and so she was free for the whole of that time. And the captain had pressed her so hard, had implored her with such persuasive words. She was so convinced that he was passionately in love with her, and she felt so isolated, so misunderstood, so neglected in the midst of all the contracts, which seemed to be her husband's only interest, that she had given way to her heart without asking herself whether she would give anything more one day. And then, after months of platonic love, of squeezed hands, of brief kisses stolen behind doors, the captain had declared that he would leave town straight away and apply for a posting unless she gave him a rendezvous, a real rendezvous, under the trees during her husband's absence. And she had given way. She had promised the meeting, and now she was waiting for him, huddled against the wall, her heart pounding wildly and starting at the slightest sound. Suddenly, she heard somebody clamoring over the wall, and she nearly ran away. What if it weren't the captain? What if it were a thief? But no, a voice called out softly, "Mathilde." She replied, "Ettenez." And a man dropped to the path with a clatter of metal. It was he, and what a kiss they exchanged. For a long time, they remained clasped in each other's arms, their lips pressed together. But suddenly a fine drizzle began to fall, and the raindrops dripping from one leaf to another produced a rippling sound of water in the darkness. She gave a start as the first drop fell on her neck. "Matilda," he said, "my darling, my love, my sweet, my angel. Let's go indoors. It's midnight. We have nothing to fear. Let's go inside, please." "No, dearest," she replied. "I'm frightened. Who knows what might happen?" But he held her tight in his arms, and he whispered in her ear, "Your servants' rooms are on the third floor overlooking the square. Your room is on the first floor, looking onto the garden. No one will hear us. I love you, and I want to love you freely and completely from head to foot." And he embraced her passionately, covering her face with kisses. She still resisted him, frightened and even ashamed. But he put his arm around her waist, picked her up, and carried her off through the rain, which was now pouring down. The door was open. They groped their way upstairs, and as soon as they were in the bedroom, she bolted the door while he struck a match. And then she fell, half fainting, into an armchair. He knelt down and slowly began undressing her, taking off her boots and stockings and kissing her feet. "No, Ettenez," she gasped. "Please, let me keep my virtue. I'd hate you for it afterwards. Besides, it's so crude and ugly. Why can't we love each other just for our souls? Ettenez." But with the skill of a chambermaid and the urgency of a man in a hurry, he was busily undoing buttons, knots, hooks, and laces. And when she tried to stand up to escape from his attack, she suddenly emerged from her dress, her skirts, and her lingerie as naked as a hand emerging from a muff. She ran in panic towards the bed to hide behind the curtains, and it was a dangerous refuge, and he followed her. But in his haste to join her, he took off his sword too quickly, and it fell on the floor with a crash. Immediately, a prolonged wail, a shrill, continuous cry, came from the next room, the door of which had been left open. "Oh," she murmured, You've woken up André. He won't be able to go back to sleep." Her son was 15 months old, and he slept in the room adjoining hers so that she could keep an eye on him. The captain, mad with excitement, wasn't listening. "What does it matter?" he said. "I love you. You're mine, Matilda." But she pushed him away, frightened and upset. No, listen to him crying. He'll wake up the nurse. What would we do if she came down? We'd be done for. Etienne, listen. When he cries like that at night, his father brings him into our bed to calm him down, and he stops crying right away, straight away. It's the only way. Let me go and fetch him, Etienne. The child was howling away, giving the sort of shrill scream which pierces the thickest walls and can be heard by passers-by in the street. The captain got up in consternation, and Matilda rushed into the next room to get the child, whom she put into the bed. He fell silent. Etienne sat down astride a chair and started rolling a cigarette. Within less than 5 minutes, André was asleep. "I'll take him back," murmured his mother, and she put him back in the cot with infinite precautions. And when she returned, the captain was waiting for her with open arms, mad with love. He clasped her in his arms, and she, surrendering at last, hugged him tight and stammered, "Etienne, Etienne, my love. Oh, if you only knew how—" André started crying again. The captain flew into a rage. "Hell and damnation," he exclaimed. "Won't that little beast shut up?" No, the little beast wouldn't. He was bellowing at the top of his voice. Matilda thought she could hear somebody moving about upstairs. It was probably the nurse coming to see what was wrong. So she jumped up and went to fetch the child. And as soon as she put him in her bed, he stopped crying. 3 times in succession, he was put back into the cot. 3 times in succession, he had to be taken out again. Captain Samovar left the house an hour before dawn, swearing like a trooper. However, to calm his impatience, Matilda promised to let him come back that very evening. He came as he had done the night before, but more ardent and impatient, excited by the delay. He took care to put his sword down very quietly across the arms of a chair. He took his boots off like a thief, and he spoke so quietly that Matilda could scarcely hear him. At last, he was on the point of achieving happiness, complete happiness, when the floor, or a piece of furniture, or perhaps the bed itself, creaked. It was a sharp sound, as if the support had snapped, and it was promptly answered by a cry, faint at first, but then growing shriller. André had woken up. Soon he was yelping like a fox. If he went on like that, the whole household was going to get up. The frantic mother rushed to get him and put him in her own bed. The captain, fuming with anger, did not get up. Very gently, he stretched out his hand, took a small piece of the child's flesh on his thighs or his buttocks between 2 fingers, and pinched it. The child struggled and uttered deafening screams. Then the captain, losing patience, pinched him harder all over his body. Gripping a fold of flesh, he squeezed it hard and twisted it. And then he let it go to take another fold next to it, and then another further on, and then yet another. The child screamed like a pig being struck or a dog being beaten. His weeping mother kissed him and caressed him, trying to calm him down and stifle his cries with kisses. But André turned purple, as if he were about to go in convulsions, and he waved his little hands and feet about in a frightening, pitiful way. The captain said quietly, "Now try taking him back to his cot. He may quiet down." Matilda went off towards the other room with her child in her arms, and as soon as he was out of his mother's bed, his cries died down, and as soon as he was back on his own, he fell completely silent, apart from a few sobs now and then. The rest of the night was quiet, and the captain achieved the happiness he desired. The next night he came again, and at one point, as he was talking rather loudly, André woke up once more and started crying. His mother went and fetched him straight away, but the captain pinched him so hard and so violently and for such a long time that the child nearly choked, rolling his eyes and foaming at the mouth. He was taken back to his cot and quieted down at once. After 4 days, he stopped crying to come to his mother's bed. The notary came back on Saturday night to resume his place at the domestic hearth and in the marriage chamber. And as he was tired from his journey, he went to bed early. And then, as soon as he had settled down to his old routine and done his duty with the scrupulous attention of a good husband, he remarked in surprise, that's funny. André isn't crying tonight. Do go and fetch him for a little while, Matilda. I like feeling him here between us. His wife got up at once and went to fetch the child, but as soon as he found himself in the bed where he had been so fond of going to sleep a few days before, he withered in terror and he screamed so loudly that he had to be taken back to his cot. Maitre Moreau could not get over his surprise. What a funny thing, he said. What's the matter with him tonight? Perhaps he's sleepy. He's been like that all the time you've been away, replied his wife. I haven't been able to have him in bed with me once. In the morning, when he woke up, the child started playing and laughing and waving his hands about. The lawyer was touched, and he ran to kiss his offspring. Then he picked him up to take him to his parents' bed. André was laughing with the vacant laughter of little creatures whose minds are still unformed. Suddenly, he caught sight of the bed with his mother in it, and his happy little face puckered up, while shrill cries came from his throat, and he struggled as if he were being tortured. There's something wrong with the child, the father murmured in astonishment, and he automatically pulled up his little nightshirt. He gave a gasp of amazement. The child's calves, thighs, back, and buttocks were covered with huge blue spots. Look at this, Matilda, shouted Maitre Moreau. It's horrible. The child's mother came running in a panic. The middle of each spot was crossed by a purple line where the blood seemed to have died. It was obviously some strange and horrible disease, the beginning of a sort of leprosy, one of those peculiar ailments in which the skin comes out in warts like a toad's back or in scales like a crocodile's. The parents looked at each other in consternation. Maitre Moreau cried, "We must send for the doctor." Matilda, deathly pale, was staring at her son, who was as spotted as a leopard, and suddenly, giving a shrill, unthinking cry, as if she had caught sight of somebody who filled her with horror, she exclaimed, "Oh, the wretch!" Maitre Moreau asked in surprise, "What do you mean? What wretch?" She blushed to the roots of her hair, and she stammered, "Nothing. It's just, you see, I think I can guess. There's no need to send for the doctor. It must be that wretch of a nurse who's been pinching the child to make him keep quiet when he cries." The angry notary went to fetch the nurse and nearly beat her. She had the effrontery to deny everything, but she was promptly dismissed. Her behavior was reported to the town council, and she found it impossible to find another situation. You've been reading with Jimmy. You've been reading The Matter with André, Guy de Maupassant's great short story. Thanks for visiting. Learn more by watching our video analysis of this story. I think you'll find it interesting. And remember, if you have any questions, email me, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Thanks for coming by.